Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Inter, and welcome back to the channel for a sort of surprise Smite 2 Alpha Weekend 4 patch notes. On the normal schedule, this would have been next week when all this stuff was going live, but it seems like they pushed it forward a little bit. They're ready for Alpha Test 4. As you can see from this picture here, Susano and Ares are coming in this update, and there'll probably be a bunch more stuff as well that I haven't checked out yet, so let's just jump right in. So first up, we have Relics and Aspects. At the start of each Conquest match, players will get an Aspect and a Relic, and you do auto-build, then Relic, then Aspect. Aspects and Relics can be changed after selection by using the undo button in the item shop and then buying a new one. Aspects and Relics cannot be sold and changed after leaving base with one. So very similar to Smite 1 Relics in terms of, once you leave base with it, you kind of locked into that. So in terms of the Relics, they've obviously said in previous posts and stuff like that they want to give us a bit more freedom in terms of the Relic choices that we have in Smite 2. It was originally just beads, and then we got the choice of beads or blink in the last alpha test, and now it appears like they're also adding Sunder. It's going to be Sundering Arc. And this is instantly damage jungle monsters and jungle bosses for 500 plus 25 per level true damage. Deals 1000 damage at level 10 plus. I assume that's meant to say level 20 plus, because that would be 500 damage 20 times 25. Also hits gods, dealing 30 plus 1 per level true damage 5 times over 4 seconds. So you're going to be able to put a little bit of a dot on the enemy gods. No damage increase as far as this is looking, so it's just going to be a straight up, you're going to throw it at them and you're going to deal level 20. That would be 200 true damage, so you can just get a little bit of extra damage that way. But this is a pretty interesting one as well, that they're essentially adding back Hand of the Gods to the game from the original days of Smite 1. So you can be securing your objectives with that. Doing 1000 true damage is probably going to be more than any ability in the game can hit, so this will be the premium objective secure in Smite 2 in this test. Purification beads, you can still buy them, it's unchanged, and Blink Rune, they have decreased the range from 7.2 to 5.6 meters, so just a little bit of a range decrease on Blink there. Still going to be combat Blink, still going to be all that stuff, so these are basically unchanged other than this nerf from the last test, but you can also use Sunder if you want there as well for your Relic choice. And I assume at this point they will have some kind of a system built in where you can choose them a bit more reasonably. Last alpha test, it was a bit of a last minute thing, and you had to sell your blink and then buy your beads or something. It seems like at the start of the game now you're just going to get this choice sort of presented to you. We'll just have a little quick read about what they say about Relics as well. Present players with equally weighted options instead of a default active effect, so there's no predetermined bias. Yeah, we saw this in Alpha Test 3, absolutely. Beads was available, and beads probably should have been bought on a lot of mid laners and ADCs, but maybe blink on your supports, junglers, and solo laners, but literally almost no one I saw in Alpha Test 3 was actually trading out their blink for beads, because either they didn't know it existed or they just couldn't be bothered. And so doing it this way, people will be presented with the choice, they can choose what they want, because I still think you're going to want beads on your damage dealers, unless you feel like you're specifically not going to need it, but I feel like a lot of the time you are going to want blink, you are going to want beads on your damage dealers rather than blink. Provide a limited number of powerful active effects that feel like they can compete with beads and blink. Yeah, they have to compete with these two. They never will, I don't think there's any other active effect in the game unless they come up with completely new ones that will actually be able to compete with these two. Any of the Smite 2 actives in the past, like Aegis doesn't compete with these, you just buy beads instead. Shell doesn't really compete with these, you probably just buy blink instead. But this Sunder is interesting, and likely you're going to end up picking this up on supports a lot of the time, I think. So I think probably the meta now will be solos and jungles by blink, damage dealing rolls by beads, and support by Sunder, because they can secure objectives with that like they did back in the day with Hand of the Gods. As they say, we do not aim to fill out this slot with more effects rapidly. Many relics from Smite 1 just can't compete with these Smite 2 relics, and are better suited to active items where they can be supplemented with proper stats. Yeah, I agree with this. There's plenty of effects already that are already on items that came from Smite 1's relic system. I don't think there needs to be a ton of options, branching upgrades, all this stuff, at least not yet. Maybe in the future they could do a branching upgrade system to the few that you do have access to, for beads, blink, Sunder, and whatever else they're going to add. But yeah, I don't think you need a massive pool of 20 different choices for this, not like you did in Smite 1. I think Sunder's a pretty good choice. I don't hate Sunder being here. I think TP should be here as well, and then maybe Aegis could fill it out. I was personally calling for Shell, but I guess Shell does make a bit more sense as a standard active item, and Sunder might make more sense this way because you can use it for objective secure and stuff like that. So yeah, probably at this point I would like to see these three plus TP and Aegis. Moving on though, Aspects, which is a completely new system in this alpha test. So these are going to be combat focused effects, not economic effects. If specific roles need gold and XP, we will look at giving those in other ways that won't require them to forfeit a combat choice. So yeah, for example, supports at the moment, there's no green starters that are giving them extra farm, there's no support bonus that's giving them extra XP like there is in Smite 1. And so they may have to look at that in terms of how are they going to fix the support farming issue. At the moment, supports are kind of getting enough farm, but that's mainly because they're sort of playing secondary jungler, just running around, like, kind of doing what they want. They're not really playing support in the same way they do in Smite 1. And I feel like once the meta gets much more developed and you actually start playing support properly, supports will fall behind in farm, so that's something they need to look at. These are designed with a balance of targeted use and flexible use. Some aspects have clear synergies for certain roles or playstyles, but others could be used on various gods or roles. These are intended to be strong effects that scale well into the late game. There are 4 aggressive options and only 1 defensive option. We want to intentionally limit the defensive option to being only functional in the support or support style roles to avoid passive and non-combative early game strategies in other lanes. So aspects do not take up an item slot. Players now have an additional HUD icon and icon on the scoreboard to indicate what aspect they have chosen. And yeah, here we go. Here are the 5 different aspect effects you'll be able to choose from. There's Barbarian, Spiritualist, Archmage, Ranger, and Warden. Barbarian is your next basic attack, deals 50 plus 4 per level bonus true damage on a 10-second cooldown. Spiritualist, basic attacks deal 12.5% bonus physical damage to all enemies within 2.5 meters of the target, so basically a golden shard style effect for those characters that need it, and probably just ADCs will take this in general. Archmage, your next ability deals 20% bonus damage on a 20-second cooldown, so a bit similar to sort of an Archmage's gem, hence the name. Ranger, passive basic attacks and abilities deal 10% bonus damage to enemies 7.5 meters or further, so that's another interesting one. There's a lot of like basic attack and ADC focused ones in here at the moment. And then Warden, this is that defensive one. Passive, each second you are nearby an allied god, you get a stacking buff that provides 1 of each protection and stacks up to 10 times. At 10 stacks, you and allies within 5 meters gain 5% increased movement speed and stacks last 10 seconds. So yeah, this is clearly the one that's much more aimed at supports. Supports are going to be grabbing this, give their teammates some aura protections and movement speed and all that good stuff. So yeah, I think overall these are pretty decent. I will say though, there is far too many like basic attack ones or ones that hunters might want. Like hunters kind of want all 3 of these. They want Ranger, Spiritualist, and Barbarian. Like they would love having all of those. Barbarian maybe not so much, but like obviously you're going to want Ranger, but you're probably going to want Spiritualist as well. Maybe just like the low clear ADCs go Spiritualist and the high clear ADCs go Ranger. I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of those targeted towards auto attackers at the moment, but I guess like, on ability users you just go Archmages. That kind of makes sense. I gotta say they're a little bit boring at the moment. I kind of was hoping there would also be one for jungle that would give some kind of jungle starter item like effect to actually make jungling feel a bit more like jungling, sort of like it does in Smite 1. But there's room for improvement. This is the first iteration of the system. We're still in the closed alpha test at the moment, so they can definitely change these up, remove some of them, replace them, however they want to do it. But I think overall it is a cool system. I'm definitely excited for this. Next up, movement system updates. Controller only. Movement no longer has variable speed depending on how far you've moved the stick. Any positive value on the stick past the dead zone will trigger you to move at full acceleration. Beforehand, there was variable movement depending on your stick position, which caused artificial slow feelings. Smite 1 does this as well. You can test it by pressing the stick ever so slightly and see you start to move forwards towards top speed immediately, just like you would with WASD. So that's interesting for any of you console players. If the movement felt a little bit weird in Smite 2, this could definitely fix it. I've never played on controller. I've always had this sort of like full acceleration with WASD. Aiming system updates. Mouse and controller sensitivities are now 100% matched to Smite 1 values, so as long as you plug your Smite 1 values in, it should match the Smite 1 experience. For controllers, rotational inputs are now scaled by delta time, allowing you to have a consistent rotation rate per second regardless of frame rate. Beforehand, we weren't scaling those inputs, which meant if your frame rate went down, so did your sensitivity. Oh my god, that's bad. Definitely a good fix there. Also, controller only aim acceleration is now on controller. This is the same setup as Smite 1. If you played with a controller on PC though and want to match Smite 1, set it to 0 since it wasn't active on Smite 1 controller. And all of these improvements are directly pulled 1-for-1 from Smite 1. So just generally fixing some of the sort of like background feel of the game, you know, if it feels a little bit off to you in previous alpha tests, maybe give this one a try. It might feel a little bit more like Smite 1 in terms of the movement and aiming. Match history tab has been added to the front end. That's pretty cool. Nice thing to see there. Just getting sort of the game up to speed a little bit in terms of these features that Smite 1's obviously had for many years. Code redemption has been added to the front end as well, and item purchase notifications have been added in game. For arena, new map features, stealth zones have been added to the center of the arena. Jungle buffs are updated to match the new buffs dropped in Conquest, and their infamy levels are automatically set to 3 and will not change throughout the match, so you get automatic max level jungle buffs in the arena. New relic battle cry replaces the ward utility relic, gains 1 charge whenever you defeat a player or whenever you are defeated. Activate the relic to gain 10 strength, intelligence, and health regen per charge of a max of 5 charges. So yeah, this is just replacing the ward because you're not going to need the ward in the arena, obviously. So you've got something useful that you can actually use in arena. It's not just a ward. New kill streak effect, hot streak. Players get a hot streak if they're on a kill streak. A kill streak is 3 player kills in 1 life. While on a hot streak, that player will deal and take 20% more damage. The player who defeats someone who's on a hot streak gains plus 100 bonus gold difference per level on top of the original kill streak and a gold. For example, if player A is level 10 and player B is level 8, player B will get 200 extra gold. This is funny, dude. I like this. Arena's always been wacky. You know, make it more wacky. You make it so if you're on a massive kill streak, you're super easy to kill, but you also completely one-shot people. I think that's funny. I might also try Arena out just to try out this system. I think it's fun. New environmental pickups also for Arena. Crowd gifts. Every 90 seconds, the crowd will throw a gift into the middle of the arena. Every time a gift is thrown, the overall spawn timer is reduced by 5 seconds. Also, when they throw one, and the next one is 85, the next one's 80, next one's 75, so they're going to come more and more frequently towards the later end of the game. Every time a player is killed, the current timer is reduced by 10 seconds as well. Picking up this gift grants 15 strength, intelligence, and 1% max health regen for 30 seconds, so you're just going to be able to get a little sort of, I guess, mini fire giant buff every time you pick these up. The gift increases its reward by 10 for every 3 minutes that are passed in the match as well, so as you get towards the late game, you're going to be getting even more stats from those. New phase effects, 10 ticket phase. When a team is 10 tickets away from winning, 2 things will happen. The crowd starts cheering for the finale. From this point on, in addition to the gifts being thrown to the center, the crowd will throw gifts at this team specifically. Happens at a random time every 15 or 20 seconds. The brutes on the opposing team get fired up. They will deal 40% more damage and receive 40% less damage. So a little bit of a comeback mechanic there for if you're sort of on your last legs in Arena. Yeah, overall pretty cool changes for Arena, I have to say. I'm not a big fan of the mode. I'm probably not going to play it like very much, honestly, but I might try it out for like a game or two in this alpha test because especially those hot streak things, I think is going to be hilarious. Moving on to Conquest though, all jungle buffs. They have fixed jungle buff value stacking if you had a higher level buff and picked up a lower level buff. Okay, so if you had like speed buff level 3 and then speed buff level 2, you get both of those. Speed buff is getting a nerfed protection shred from 10 down to 5 on the level 1 and 20 down to 10 on the level 3, so just a little bit less flat pen available to junglers there. Jungle practice is going to be available in this, like a proper jungle practice, not just like that testing dev box that we had in the previous alpha test. So there'll be a proper jungle practice map now. From what I've seen, it's still relatively bare bones. They'll probably work on it a little bit more. It's not like Smite 1's jungle practice where you have access to loads of different stuff, but they have some things here that you have access to, like reset health of mana, reset cooldown, set level 20, all that kind of stuff. Moving on though, we have Susano coming in this alpha test, and I have to say I'm pretty excited about this one. I hope they get him right, because Susano is very much a god that thrives on the feel of him, you know, his crisp auto attack cancels, the way his abilities work, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully they get him right in Smite 2, we'll have to see. And so yeah, they say here, we were especially careful to not disrupt Susano's powerful and clean kit flow. Yeah, absolutely. Susano has a totally new passive with a focus on debuffing targets to give him a new angle of utility to bring to teamfights and to weaken targets he doesn't kill. This passive is specifically designed to reward him for in-hand cancelling, weaving basic attacks between abilities. Additionally, Typhoon no longer pulls enemies in during its build-up and instead deals damage over time to enemies in the area. So basic attacks for him are basically unchanged, it seems, in Smite 2. The new passive though, here we go. When you use an ability, your next basic attack will debuff the enemy hit. Weave in basic attacks between abilities to progressively stack this debuff. Enemies with 1 to 2 stacks have reduced strength, enemies with 3 to 4 stacks are slowed, and enemies with 5 to 6 stacks take 10% increased damage, and of course you maintain the previous debuffs as you go up this stack. Debuffs last 3 seconds and refresh on new application, so yeah, basically it's giving Susano a little bit more incentive to weave in basic attacks in between his abilities. Obviously, if you're high level Susano, you're doing this anyway, so it's just a bunch of extra free benefit. And it's going to be pretty damn easy to at least get to the slow. You know, getting to 5 to 6 stacks, they're probably either dead by that point or you've had to disengage or something, but getting to 3 stacks is relatively easy, so you're going to be able to get this slow pretty consistently, which is definitely a big buff to Susano in Smite 2. Definitely would be cool to play with. Storm Counter, as far as I'm seeing, is basically completely unchanged. It is going to be scaling entirely with strength. There's no in-scaling on this. Wind Siphon also looks pretty much unchanged. Damage scaling is with strength there. Jet Stream, unchanged as well, just strength. And then the ult is basically unchanged aside from the fact that, you know, it's no longer going to pull enemies in while it's charging up. It's instead going to deal tick damage to everyone that's in the area. And I guess that's probably just because they gave him a little bit of extra utility on the passive. They gave him a slow on that, so having, you know, the Typhoon also still pull enemies in. You know, Susano already has a lot of powerful CC, considering his damage output and mobility and all that stuff, so I understand why they've removed that. Next up, though, we have Ares. The top DPS support returns and will likely continue to hold that accolade in Smite Smite 2. Ares has an entirely new passive and ability too. His passive no longer restricts his builds to the narrow category of aura items, but instead provides him and allies strength and in through building protections and cooldown. This new passive allows Ares to tailor his build towards amplifying the correct damage stat for each unique team comp he is on. It also gives him additional sources of strength and int, both of which he can utilize in Smite 2. So it looks like Ares is going to be a bit of a strength and int mixed character. They've replaced his 2. Honestly, I'm a little bit sad about that. It depends what they've replaced it with, obviously, but I kind of like Ares 2. I think it's a bit of an underrated, very powerful ability, and his 3 is a little bit boring. I'd have probably rather seen his 3 be replaced. So yeah, moving into that 2, his second ability is also totally reworked to Call to Arms. This is still a buff effect for allies, but it provides a unique combination of protections and basic attack damage. Didn't it basically already do that? And each ally can reap more powerful stats from it if they continue to fight against other gods while it's active. This effect helps Ares support his carry or even be a bit of one himself. In addition to these reworks, Ares has a variety of other gameplay changes and QOL changes. His ultimate chains will now be broken immediately if the target gains CC immunity. Shackles can be fired initially while channeling Searing Flesh. In Smite 1, this was only true of the refire, not the initial fire. That's definitely a good change there. And Shackles chains now have visual feedback for the refire duration and chains duration. So some nice QOL changes for him there. Basic attacks, unchanged. Passive, Ares provides strength and intelligence in an aura, provides more strength as Ares builds protections, and provides more intelligence as Ares builds cooldown, and both will increase per level. His chains are basically unchanged, other than scaling with strength now in Smite 2, compared to magical power in Smite 1, so they're going to be scaling with 30%, scaling per tick of strength, and to the minion damage is going to be 15%. Moving on, we got his new 2, so you and ally gods around you gain increased magical and physical protections and basic attack damage. While this effect is active, each buffed god will be able to extend the duration and increase the effects of their own buff by damaging enemy gods. The buff is extended by 4 seconds after hitting an enemy god 3 times, so this is going to be giving 30 of each prots and 24 basic attack damage. So they say it's a completely new 2, but it's kind of very similar to Ares' old 2, honestly. Just minus the HP 5, I believe. I'm pretty sure it has HP 5 on it in Smite 1. It actually definitely does. That's why it's so good in Assault. Yeah, so minus the HP 5 is pretty much the exact same as Ares 2. I don't know why they're really calling this a new ability, unless I'm missing something. But they, of course, added that effect where you can extend it, so it's a little bit of an additional thing there. Searing Flesh, basically unchanged, I think, but this one's going to be scaling with intelligence. As I said, a little bit further up, he's going to be a sort of a mixed intelligence and strength user. So we've got strength damage on the chains, we've got intelligence damage on the Searing Flesh. And then finally, his ultimate is basically unchanged as well. No surprise there, pretty iconic ultimate. It's going to be scaling with strength, this one. So it looks like you're going to be wanting to build mostly strength on Ares, because it's going to be good for his basic attacks, good for his 1, good for his ultimate. But you don't really hate throwing in a little bit of intelligence in there to, you know, scale off his 3 a little bit as well. Moving into god balance for Alpha 4. So both the gods and item balance of this update focus on buffing many of the underperforming tanky gods and items, and nerfing the top performing DPS gods and items. So a bit of a sweeping overhaul to how tanks and DPS are going to be balanced in the game. Definitely looking forward to this. Some tanks, and especially some tank items, just feel almost completely useless in Smite 2 at the moment, so definitely good to see. In general, they have increased the per level health on all gods to offset the 25% reduced base health in the Alpha Weekend 3 patch, so they've reverted a little bit of what they did for the last one. This means that level 1 gods will be basically unchanged, but while at level 20, you'll be significantly more tanky. So yeah, in the early game, it's still going to be very lethal, and the late game is going to be a little less so. Level 1 will play like Alpha Weekend 3, level 20 will play like Alpha Weekend 2 in regards to health. We like how the adjustment helped encourage aggression and fighting in the laning phase, but had some negative consequences on late game combat. One of these consequences is a functional nerf to tanky builds. With less total health available, protections became a bit worse. Adding back this health by level 20 helps tanky builds feel appropriately tanky. So Thanatos is getting more damage on Death Sight, more base damage, but they are decreasing the penetration on Scent of Death, sort of in line with what they did in Smite 1 a little bit, but not quite as much as they did in Smite 1. And then they have also decreased the damage on Soul Reap a little bit as well, base and scaling. For Morrigan, on her passive, the damage from this ability will now detonate to second damage on Dark Omen. I thought this was already how it was meant to work. Maybe this is a fix, or maybe this wasn't how it was supposed to work, but it is now. So basically, the ability damage from your third hit of your chain that does the AoE, that's now going to proc the secondary damage of Dark Omen if you have it on them, which is good. I think this is how it was supposed to work in the first place, but I'm not sure. For his 3, they have made it scale down in cooldown, so it's going to be 19 seconds at rank 1 now, so just making Morrigan a little bit more unsafe in the early game. And then Changeling, if you use a relic while transformed to another god, that cooldown will now be applied to Morrigan's relic itself, so that's how it works in Smite 1. They just didn't have that implemented for the previous Alpha Weekend. Fenrir, they have nerfed the base damage on his ultimate. Honestly, this is good. Fenrir's really strong, but honestly, I feel like they just need to make it so there's a bit of a delay on biting people again. Sol, they have decreased the healing per tick from 3% to 2.5% on Radiance, and they have also decreased the base damage on her ultimate by quite a lot at base, and also quite a lot of scaling as well. For Athena, they have given her dash 20 up to 40 of both protections for 4 seconds on hitting an enemy god with it, so when she engages, she'll be bit more tanky, but they have also removed the slow entirely from her too. Chak, they have increased the damage scaling on his 2 by 10% of strength, and then Stormcall, they have also increased the damage scaling by 10% of strength as well, so a little bit more incentive to build strength on Chak there. Ymir, they have increased the stun duration on Frost Breath from 0.8 to 1.6 to 1 to 1.6, so in the early game you're just going to be getting a little bit more there. This might seem low, but of course last alpha we had that change where they have massively nerfed ER, but also significantly nerfed the CC durations of everything. So this definitely won't ever be as long as the actual like listed duration in Smite 1, but in theory it should be actually CCing for longer a lot of the time because of the diminishing returns nerfs. For his ultimate, they have also increased the damage floor from 25 to 35, so if you're popping it immediately, you're going to get a lot more damage, and they've also increased the base damage of the ability quite a bit, especially in the late game, but they have decreased the damage scaling a little bit, 175% to 160% of int. And finally for Odin, Lunge, they have increased the damage scaling by 10% of strength as well. Moving into item balance, Soul Devourer gets nerfed, no surprise there, this item's kind of broken, honestly, in the current state of Smite 2. They have decreased the intelligence by 8, so not really massive. I think they should probably nerf the passive on this item, honestly, rather than just like the base stats. Staff and Murden, they've decreased the intelligence as well, which I think is fine. You can't really nerf the passive effect of Murden. I guess you could increase the cooldown, but honestly, yeah, just give it like subpar base stats to make sure you're paying for that powerful effect. Haste and Fatalis nerf fixed an issue where this was overcapping negative basic attack movement penalty, resulting in large movement speed gains when fully stacked and basic attacking. Yeah, this was kind of silly in Alpha 3. I don't know if anyone's seen the clips. Bloodforge Blade, they have decreased the strength by 5. This is a very popular rush for a lot of junglers, just getting that active shield effect is super powerful, so that's going to get a nerf as well. Leviathan Hide is getting buffed, increase the protections by 5, increase the cost by 200, but they've also buffed the passive from 5% strength reduction, stacking 3 times, to 10% stacking 2 times. So going to be 5% more overall, and also a lot easier to stack on this as well when people are hitting you. Shoguns, they have increased the magical protections by 10. Hussar's Wings, they've fixed the tooltip. The passive effect provides 20% instead of the previously listed 10%. Stampede gets 5 more physical protections. For Ruinous Ankh, they have decreased the mana from 150 to 100, but increased the health from 250 to 300, so you're going to be getting a little bit more tanky stats there. Breastplate of Valor, they have reduced the health taken threshold on the passive from 400 plus 30 per level to 350 plus 20 per level, so these are the new thresholds. It's going to be a lot more easy to get those stacks up. Silken Mailcoat, they have increased the physical protections by 10, and Pharaoh's Curse, they have increased the physical protections by 5, and also decreased the cost by 50 gold as well. So yeah, there you go. That is the Alpha Weekend 4 patch notes. Honestly, nothing too crazy. This is a very small patch, especially in comparison to the previous one for Alpha Weekend 3, which changed a whole bunch of stuff. Arena updates are really cool. I do like that. Susano and Ares will be fun to play with as well, but yeah, this is a very small patch. They've just done some balance adjustments, added a couple of new things. Sunder is now in the game, which is pretty cool. Aspects are nice as well, but I do think some work needs to be done on like what these aspects are actually providing. There's a few too many like basic attack ones, and they're a little bit uninteresting in certain ways, but again, it's the first implementation of this system. I imagine they can do a lot more with it. Personally, I'd like to see full-on like trees that you can do like in League with the rune system, but I know a lot of people are against that. When I've suggested that in the past, people have been like, no, don't do that. It's going to be too complicated. For me, I think it'd be cool to have a little tree of like, you know, maybe you have 2 different options on each side, like 3 times maybe, and then at the bottom you get this style of effect. So you have just like little passive bonuses that you can get, and then at the bottom you get a big effect like these ones or something. But yeah, as a first implementation, I do like the idea of the aspect system. I think it'll be cool. But yeah, relatively small patch overall, other than like the new gods, the arena changes, and the aspects. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my review of this. If you want to catch my gameplays of Alpha Weekend 4, I'll be bringing those 2 into games, the second channel. That'll be linked below for that if you want to check that out. And I will catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.